Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shay Ali, and I'm here with you on Inspired Online. And today we're going all the way out to South Africa to meet the lovely Bev Hancock. So Bev is an amazing lady who specializes in the art of conversation. So how would you like to have an empowering conversation, a constructive conversation, a conversation that actually incentivizes you to change? Well, this is her specialty. She works with people in all sorts of different contexts to have those transformational conversations, which can obviously change relationships, change businesses, change lives. So we are delighted to welcome her to Inspired. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Bev. It's such a pleasure to have you. And I'm going to start with a question that we ask all our speakers first is, if you had to share your wisdom with the world in a nutshell, what would you say?
Hi, Shane. It's so wonderful to be here. I think it's just so amazing that we can reach across the ocean and be in the same room together. I think, you know, the wonders of technology is just amazing. And it's just so good to see you apart from anything else. So it's a great question, because I think it's probably distilled the last 50 years of my life of learning and being a single mom and all of that. And I think it comes down to words create worlds. Every word that we speak has the power to transform. Every word that we speak, both to ourselves and to others, has the power to create a different version of our future. And I think when I realized that the power of transformation doesn't lie with others, it lies within us. And that for me was the most powerful concept ever.
Wow. Okay. So when you say that power of transformation lies within us, I mean, that's a really big concept for some people to even take on board. And especially right now where, you know, a lot of people might be feeling very helpless at their circumstances. So what would you say to those people that, you know, maybe haven't grappled with that concept before of how can you transform from within?
I think, Shay, we all need to understand that in the process of change, we kind of go through a curve. And the change curve, or a lot of people have seen it as the grief curve. Whenever we go through change, we see change as loss. And when we see change as loss, we grieve for what we have lost. And we're shut down by fear, by denial, by anger, by frustration, because it's something that we can't control. And when we move through that space, I really just would love to invite the people who are on this call with us today to listen to the voice inside our heads. I think one of the most powerful things I ever read was we have conversations with people all day long. But the most important conversations that we have are the ones we have with ourselves. So if you just turn your ears inwards for a moment, just listen to the conversation that's going on inside your head. You can't control the government narrative. You can't control the narrative that's happening on Facebook and on social media, some of which is wonderful, some of which is toxic. But what you can control, and I call it getting into the driver's seat of your life. The more we can bring what we've got now back into a place where we can move from the passenger seat, or quite frankly, I think most of us feel as if we're in the back seat in terms of control of our lives at the moment. And that starts with the conversation that we have with ourselves. So I would really love to encourage people just to press the pause button and to listen to that internal conversation. And it's a little bit like a washing machine. It just goes round and round and round and round. And say, let's start with that conversation, because that's the one thing, and maybe the only thing at the moment that we can control.
Yeah, absolutely. So what if those conversations that you're having with yourself are things like, you know, some people might be hearing that voice as, I don't know how I'm going to pay for my shopping this month, or my business has tanked and I don't have any new clients. How am I going to pay my mortgage? So what if you've got those kind of voices going on? I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's fears, but are those really the most empowering questions that we can be asking?
So that's really the reality of what we're facing at the moment. And I'm sure that both you and I have been in that situation as well. I certainly know that I have. I had basically 97% of my income wiped off the table in 2 days. All right.
Wow.
So I flew back to my home in Port Elizabeth. So it's a very, very real conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't want to minimize just how powerful that is in people's lives. And I think that's where we sometimes as transformational leaders want to tell people to snap out of it, or to try this mantra and everything will be all right, and that yes, we're entering a brave new world, and all of those things very possibly are true. But I think the first thing we need to realize is that those conversations are very real. And to be able to, first of all, recognize that before we go to change, we need to go to biology. We need to understand that what our brain is doing is that it's looking at what it knows and it's repeating that back to you.
I see.
So what we have to do is that we have to give our brains a new reality. And we have total power over that. So it's an opportunity to reframe our story. And if I could share a wonderful story. So my hairdresser, as we know, hairdressers are probably sitting there absolutely desperate at the moment. They cannot take their hairdressing practice online. They might be able to give you a few lessons on how to do some self-coloring and that kind of thing. But they want
it would be a disaster for me.
It would, exactly.
Don't touch my own colour, to be fair.
Exactly.
Strictly hairdresser only.
and so much of the narrative is, well, you know, a hairstyle is a luxury, not a necessity. And my first thing is, let's frame that. It's not about the treatment, it's about the person giving the treatment. So I've been working with my hairdresser, who is a single grandmother. Her daughter is going through a really rough time at the moment, so she is supporting her grandchildren as well. She supports her partner, so she's a total breadwinner, and she's not healthy herself. So what we did is that we started having a series of conversations, and I can't change her reality, but I could step next to her and say, can we look at this differently? So we played around with a few ideas, and together we created a couple of vouchers that she has sent out to her clients, and her clients have now paid it forward. For the next couple of months, she's now okay. She can eat. She can pay for her medical bills. Wow. So in the midst of this, it's saying, how can we reframe that conversation? How can we reach out to people who can help us see our world differently? How can we look for a solution that we're not seeing ourselves? Because when we're in fear, we shut down. Our logical thinking, creative brains that are generally serve us so well have shut up shop and said, okay, enough is enough. And this is where surrounding yourself with people who are transformational, people who can speak positively into your lives, to reach out to the one thing that we have to give to each other at the moment, and that is kindness. And to be able to say, how can we reframe the conversation and say, all right, well, you can't cut my hair, but as one of your clients, I could help you with a voucher. But it's not about that. It's about actually opening up the floodgates to be able to say, could we have a different conversation with our customers? And in having that kind of conversation, that solution just emerged. And she says people have phoned her from all over the world and have reached out to her.
Oh, that's so lovely. Wow.
So that's a practical conversation, but it's also about now, this is a fun game that you can play. Have you ever had a worry half hour?
I suppose I have.
Okay, so it's kind of a game that you can play with yourself. So you make an appointment in your diary to have a worry half an hour. So you go and get in a bath and maybe pour yourself a lovely glass of wine or whatever your beverage of choice is. My last bottle of wine turned into grape juice, which was very disappointing. And you give yourself half an hour and you worry about everything. And I mean absolutely everything.
That doesn't sound fun.
It doesn't sound fun at all, but you take everything to a point of worst case scenario and so ridiculous that it becomes almost funny.
Well, I'm going to die alone in a hole, I think.
But you only give yourself half an hour. Thereafter, you get out of your bath and you say, I've had my worry.
Mm.
my body, I've noticed what's happened to my body, because when you do worry, you will notice that your body responds. And you now say, for the rest of the 23 and a half hours, I'm going to give my body the chance to love, to reach out, to be kind to myself, to take the conversation in my head and say, there will be a brighter tomorrow every time I see those fears starting to emerge. And and speak it out aloud, because when your brain hears it aloud, that conversation becomes exponentially more powerful and it rewires your brain.
Wow, I love it. This is great. And then you've time limited, the time to worry. So when you've had that frame on it, I guess what you've done is you've acknowledged that emotion, you've not made it wrong, you've given it space to breed and whatever you want to do with that. And then, give space to breed other things.
It does, yes.
So
it also makes it conscious, because I think a lot of our worry is unconscious, and we're doing it all the time, and we're not focusing on the fact that so when you worry consciously, you can as consciously not worry.
I love it.
So it's really bringing it into that space.
Yeah. So we've done our worry half hour potentially. What are some really good questions that we can ask ourselves?
All right. So great questions. But before that, can I just share one more thing, which maybe will speak into the question? I talk about the science and magic. So we've spoken a bit about the brain, which is the science. But I think we need to talk about the magic, because one of the questions is how can we wave our magic wand? So I always, as a single mom, was very goal-driven. I got my kids through school, through university, across the graduation stage. They're now happy doing what they're doing, because I used to set goals, and I never understood why that worked until, once again, on Facebook, and we know if it's on Facebook, it must be true. I came across this meme that asked the question, do you know what the word abracadabra means? Now, we all know that's magic. It means you wave your magic wand and you go abracadabra and you can create magic and something beautiful happens. So I went and checked it, because that's just the kind of person that I am. And the word comes from the ancient Aramaic. And it means when I speak, I create.
Nice.
And when you associate that with magic, you ask yourself the question, what is the magic that I need right now? Because quite frankly, nothing else is working. So what is the magic that I need? And if we put magic in that frame and say, if I can speak something into existence, what would it be?
It's lovely. Really, really nice. So how do you know what to pick? Because one of the questions that I ask people a lot is, what do you want? And it always baffles me how many people are like, I don't know. I've never really thought about that. It's a very difficult question. So what if you're in that place where you don't know what you want to create, so you don't know what to speak? Where would you start?
I would certainly start by once again pressing the pause button and really going into a space of what's known as the beginner's mind. When you don't know, look at it as you would a child. And what does a child do when they don't know what to do? They find something that they're curious about, that intrigues them, and they go and play with it a little bit. So possibly the question could be, as I look around me, what do my eyes light on? What is something that is especially important to me right now? It could be your children, it could be your family, it could be the work that you do, it could be the fact that you love gardening. And start with something that you know, and look at it through the eyes of a child and say, what do I love about this? What makes this special? How could I use this to make somebody else happy? And take the pressure off. In fact, I had a client a couple of days ago who said to me, can you help kickstart me to get my business right? And after half an hour, we soon realized that the thing that she needed to kickstart was not her business. She had to love and accept herself first. So the question actually changes, because we agreed to pause and start with a blank canvas and actually just allow ourselves to think about what's the most important thing to me now. If I don't have some big dream or some big goal, what am I seeing now, feeling now, curious about now, wishing for now? If I could wave my magic wand and I could have one thing now, what would it be? And it can be outrageous. And that's the amazing part about this process, is that we don't have to put a lid on things and say, well, I can't have this because the shops are closed, or I can't have this because there isn't money coming in. In this moment, you can wave that magic wand and have anything that you want. So it starts opening up the space to get a little bit outrageous, a little bit fun, a little bit into what I call our unicorn space.
I love that. Unicorn space. Make it unique, you know. And sometimes I think, there's more outrageous things. Well, I say this with caution, but the more outrageous things are sometimes the things that will happen because you don't expect it, you're not attached, and then suddenly they just land, right?
And there's that, and the science supports that, because when you're in this space of creativity and innovation rather than worry and fear, it actually opens up your brain that you want to reach out, and you find that people now are attracted to you. Your ideas start flowing, it opens the motivational centers of your brain, and you start thinking about good ideas. So there's actually a huge science to it. Most importantly, it starts with play. When you're worried, go and play. Let your inner child go, and let her or him a lot of fun. I think perhaps another very important question is, who are you listening to at the moment? And I think at the moment, this is a particularly important question. I tell you that I have rigorously removed all the negativity off my Facebook feed.
Wow.
Okay.
Nice.
So I don't go and look for virus information and that sort of thing. I've got one really sound source who gives me the facts. I go to sources that inspire. And having said remove the negativity, I don't mean that people who necessarily disagree with me, because otherwise we just go into confirmation bias. All right. Yeah. I like differing views, but people who are, and I don't want to use the word positive, because sometimes we think the positive is upbeat and we're happy and we're optimistic. That's not always the case. But there are people who are moving into this new space. Somebody said something to me the other day, which I found absolutely profound. He said to me, this can either be an interruption in our lives or a disruption in our lives.
Wow.
If it's simply an interruption, we go back to what we were before. If it's a disruption, it can actually take our lives to a whole new level. And who you listen to and the people that you choose to associate with now can make a big difference in terms of where you go and how you actually see this process through. And the conversations that you have with them should be speaking into your life. They should be uplifting you. They should be challenging your thinking. They should be opening up a space. And most importantly, they should be loving.
I love it. Yeah, it's so important even now. I think there's a lot of stuff available out there, a lot of people that we can pick to listen to. And, why not make that positive? Why not make that something that's going to enrich us and get us ready for, the next stage of what's to come? So, although you are based in South Africa, and you say that South Africa is really a place where you can create this magic, and this magic of conversation really came to the forefront. Can you say more about that? What is magical about South Africa?
Well, I think apart from the fact that it's a really beautiful country and I love coming home to it from all my travels, but there are two things that I'd really like to share with you. The first one is that we have a magical concept, which is an ancient African conversation called UBUNTU. It's spelled UBUNTU for those people who don't know. And it is about being fully human. And if you want a definition of it, it probably would translate into I am because we are. And when we embrace that, I think that that's a gift that we have to bring to the world, which I think is absolutely amazing. So that's the first thing. And then there's another word that comes from Africa. It's also one of our indigenous languages, and it's called, the word is sawubona. It's a greeting. When I greet you first, I will say sawubona she. And that word means I see you. And isn't that the most wonderful concept? To be able to say in the space where we are locked down, shut in, that we can say to people, I really, really see you.
I see you for who you are. Yeah. And a lot of people, you know, are feeling probably quite alone right now. And it's really important to do. So how would you say you can apply those concepts in the now?
Well, I think first and foremost, we are so fortunate we are going through this particular pandemic with such wonderful access to technology, because you can be phoning your mum, you can be phoning your grandmum, your grandparents, your family, and you can be saying to them, I see you. Rather than, you know, sorry, we haven't been able to get together for the last 2 years because I've been so busy, I haven't had time. I think more than anything now, we have an opportunity to reach out. And then to really practice Ubuntu. I think a lovely story that happened across my news feed yesterday is one of our retailers has chosen not to sell burgers and hot food and stationery from their supermarket. And they have said, instead, please won't you go and support. And in their particular complex, they have some fast food restaurants who have now finally been allowed to open again, and said, please go and support them instead. And there's a little stationery shop around the corner. We're not selling stationery. Please go and buy from that shop instead. Now that for me was just such a practical example of what we can do in this space.
And what we can do to support those around us so that we all thrive, right?
Absolutely.
So that's wonderful. We're coming up towards the end of our time together nearly, but before we go, do you have any final thoughts or any final questions that you'd like to share with us?
I think what I would love to say to people is that in this time that we are going through together, we have such an opportunity. We've been focusing a lot on the negative, on the fear and what we don't have. I started off by saying that we see change as loss. What if we saw change as gain? And maybe that's the question that I want to leave. What if we see change as gain, that we come out of this better, kinder, more loving, more connected, and start practicing some of that magic with each other?
Lovely. And I've got to follow on from that. What are some of the practices that you do to, see change as gain? Do you have any practices that you do every day, apart from your worry half hour? Do you have any other practices that you can share with us?
Yes, I do. There's one very powerful one. A friend of mine and I work with this process called the word of the year, and maybe we need to choose a word of the week or a word of the day even. And say, what is the one word that I'm going to focus on today? What is the one thing that's going to get me through the day? What am I grateful for? I think is something that we often do in terms of our reflection. And I think the other thing I ask myself is, can I have a mad day? Now, a mad day for me is a make a difference day. Okay.
Oh, lovely. Okay, thank you.
So at the end of the day, can I actually, before I go to bed at night, say, did I have a mad day? Did I make the difference in one person's life, or in my own life, or in my family's life? Did I do one small thing that shifted that place where change is now gain rather than loss?
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much. If our audience out there would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
I would say bevhancock.com is my website address, or you can find me on LinkedIn. If you just put Bev Hancock, I normally come up pretty close to the top, or Bev Hancock South Africa. I'm sure you'll find me straight away.
Yeah, and you'll recognize the beautiful face, and off we go.
Oh, thank
So
you, Shay. It's been
thank
so
you.
special spending time with you. It really has. It's been wonderful.
I've loved it too. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for joining us today.
Uh,
Obviously, I hope to see you again in person sooner rather than later. So,
that would be wonderful.
yeah, until our paths connect again.
Yeah.
Lots of love.
And you too. Bye.